Hello there everyone, welcome to FATBOSS TV. Today we're looking at the first boss from Ny'alotha, Wrathion.
So this two-phase fight is the first dragon encounter we've had for a while, and there's actually two of them in the instance. As this is the first boss, you can understand that there isn't too many things going on here, and it is a rather simple fight. But regardless, let's jump straight in and have a look at phase 1.
So as a dragon, Ratheon has a breath. This frontal cone deals magic damage and applies a 20-second debuff which increases the damage you take by breaths, and this stacks. You'll just want to swap every 2 stacks whilst facing the boss away from the raid. Also, he has a tail swipe, so standing directly behind the boss will trigger this ability, knocking you away if you're hit, so you should aim to stand at the side of the boss. For the raid to watch out for is Incineration. This debuff is applied to up to 3 random players, dealing light ticking damage for 8 seconds before it explodes. The raid damage this deals is reduced the further the players are from the raid. For everybody to watch out for is Gale Blast. This cast generates a circle around the boss, and at the end of the cast, everyone still within the circle takes a massive burst of damage and gets knocked back. People outside the circle do still take damage, but it's just far less. This is then followed by fireballs that fall from the sky onto random players' locations, and these fall really fast, making it very difficult to dodge, so ideally you'll already be pre-spread out, because otherwise you're going to get a bunch of fireballs landing on your face and it could potentially one-shot you. Now his main ability in this phase is Burning Cataclysm. He'll become untargetable and fly to one side of the room. Shortly afterwards, multiple red zones will spawn across the encounter space. They'll then grow to large patches of fire which explode after a couple of seconds. Now the patches always land in such a way that there will always be a gap. You've just got to be quick to identify where this is. Generally speaking, once you know which side of the room the boss has moved to, you should always move to the direct opposite side. Somewhere along that wall there will be a spot where the fire will not reach. You've got to get there as soon as possible, let the things explode, and then once that's over, move straight back to the boss and the fight just continues. Now almost immediately after this, the boss will cast Molten Eruption. This will just spawn multiple pools within the room, and these are important for phase 2. Ideally you'd avoid the landing locations, but otherwise you can actually stand in the patches, they don't deal any damage to you. One thing tanks need to be aware of is that directly after this Molten Eruption cast, sometimes the boss can be a bit of a bastard and cast a breath as he's running back towards the raid. So tanks, you just want to try and face the boss away as soon as possible. Now after he's done that cycle twice, phase 2 will begin.
He'll cast Smoke and Mirrors and become untargetable. Shortly after, every molten pool in the room that was spawned from the Molten Eruption will spawn a shard. You'll want to kill these as soon as possible because any still alive at the end of the phase will explode into lava pools, which will apply unavoidable raid-wide dots which can stack and last permanently. On normal and heroic, it should be possible to clear all of them before the phase is over, but for mythic we're not too sure. To help you destroy the spikes, various Ratheon scales fall from the sky right at the start of the phase. For each that hits the ground, the raid will take huge damage, so you'll want to soak them. The player that soaks them will actually gain a buff that allows them to instantly remove spikes by running over them, but unfortunately this is limited as the buff has a stack removed for each spike you destroy. When a spike is destroyed, it deals a burst of damage to all players within 10 yards of it, and for the people with a buff, they're obviously going to take this damage frequently as they run through all of them. So tanks and classes with damage reductions or immunities are probably best for doing that particular job. Now whilst they're destroying the spikes, the rest of the raid should focus on the ones further away from the boss, as the buff players cannot remove every single one of them. At the same time, assassins will spawn. These have a stealth and will fixate on a random target and stun them for 10 seconds once they reach them, dealing massive damage to them. To stop that from happening, you'll want to break the stealth by using AoE effects, flares, and crowd control like Ring of Peace. The moment the stealth is broken, they're far less dangerous and can just be picked up by your tanks. Once you've made it through that, phase 1 will begin again, hopefully you've killed all the spikes, and the cycle will repeat. As for Mythic, there are 2 changes. One of them is Creeping Madness. This is a debuff applied to the entire raid at the start of phase 1, and it times out just before phase 2 begins. The debuff makes it so whenever you move, you gain a stack of slow that lasts 45 seconds. If this stack ever gets to 50, you'll take massive damage every single time you move, pretty much one-shotting you. So essentially with this debuff, whenever you move, you'll want to try standing still afterwards for at least 45 seconds, allowing your stack to reset, which isn't always possible, so instead, you just kinda need to limit your movement and hope that you don't get 50 stacks before phase 2 begins. We did however find that you could completely remove this stack using movement freeing effects like Blessing of Freedom, Vengeful Retreat, Dispersion, things of that nature. And as for the second change, it applies to the spikes in phase 2. They are now completely immune, and the only way you can remove that immunity and begin to start dealing damage to them is by having your players with the Ratheon Scales debuff to run through them. And the problem is you only have 30 stacks, and there is way more than 30 spikes.
Well, there certainly was on PTR, so it seems like you're going to be forced into having a few of the lava pools in each of the phase 1, so it kind of maybe acts like a pseudo-enrage, kind of keeping your healers on your toes. So Mythic gets pretty nutty.
It does, yeah, so that's the encounter. So moving on to feedback, what do we think?
It's nice to have a dragon fight back, and it certainly isn't a bad start to the instance, but I wouldn't say that it's perfect. The main issue with the encounter is the pacing of phase 1, in my opinion. There's just large gaps of time filled with pretty much nothing, and you're kind of left waiting for the next mechanic. You could argue this is a lot worse for ranged, as you can essentially stand still the majority of phase 1 just nuking, only ever really having to move if you get the incineration, or if you need to dodge the, fire during the burning cataclysm. Of course, you still need to pay attention then, but as soon as that's over, switch back off, and nuke the boss. And it's encouraged that you do that on Mythic as well, which I find kind of funny.
Yeah.
So to kind of fix it, the phase either needs to be sped up before it hits live servers, or maybe something small added to fill the gaps. Not necessarily to make the fight harder by any means, but just so there's something that players actually have to do. Even if it's something basic and mundane, it's kind of better than nothing. Phase 2, on the other hand, I do very much enjoy. It's very fast-paced. There's lots of things that you need to do, especially with the assassins. I'm really looking forward to seeing exactly how people are going to try and deal with those, because, are you going to stack up in one spot? We did that a few times and just kind of make a little huddle, and you put flares down, you put CC down, and they don't really do anything. But of course, you've got the people running with the scales, and they can just run it.
Be targeted.
Yeah, of course. If that person gets stunned for 10 seconds, then their debuff's going to completely time out, and then you just got a bunch of spikes that you need to deal with. So do you want to follow and escort the people with the scales instead? There's all these sort of different strategies that you could employ on this fight. And they also seem to spawn in the exact same locations every single time, but we didn't have enough time to test that. But in theory, you could pre-position for the phase and immediately break their stealth. So that could also be another thing that people try and do.
Yeah, it's a shame we didn't get enough time on the boss. But just to conclude the video, I would agree it needs a slight tweak to phase 1 just to fix that downtime. But aside from that, it is a decent first boss.
It certainly is.
But thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this preview, then do drop us down a like. It helps us out a lot. And as always, if you would like to know more about this encounter or keep up to date as they change things, as well as when it eventually hits live servers, if you do need a guide, then go check out our work over on Wowhead. A link for that is in the description below. And we will see you in the next preview.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.